What if the way you think isn't wrong, it's simply different? Maybe you notice things other people ignore. Maybe you need more time to process a conversation, question ideas that everyone else accepts, or suddenly understand something long after everyone has stopped talking about it. And sometimes, this difference can make you feel like you don't belong. You may wonder, why do I think so much? Why can't I just go with the flow like everyone else? But a different mind often sees different possibilities. Today, we're going to explore 5 signs your mind works differently from most people, not to make you feel superior, but to help you understand yourself better. Because when you understand how your mind works, you stop fighting yourself. You become more intentional about your choices, your relationships, your work, and your time. So stay with me until the end, because one of these signs might explain something about yourself you've never been able to put into words. If you're ready to understand your mind and take your personal growth to the next level, subscribe to Next Level Motivation and join our growing community. Now, let's discover the 5 unique signs that your mind works differently from most people. 1. You notice what others miss. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately noticed that something felt different, even though nobody said anything? Maybe you noticed that a friend was unusually quiet. Maybe you saw a small change in someone's tone of voice. Maybe you noticed a detail in a meeting that everyone else completely ignored. This can be a sign that your mind naturally pays attention to details. You don't simply hear what people say. You often notice how they say it. You observe their expressions, pauses, body language, and little changes in behavior. For example, imagine you're sitting with 3 friends. One person is laughing and participating in the conversation, but you notice they keep checking their phone and avoiding eye contact. Others may think they're fine, but your mind starts asking, something seems off. That doesn't mean your interpretation is always correct. This is important. Being observant doesn't mean being able to read minds. It means you collect small clues that other people may overlook. The practical advantage is that you can use this ability wisely. At work, notice what customers repeatedly complain about instead of only listening to the loudest complaint. In relationships, notice patterns rather than reacting to one bad day. When learning something new, pay attention to the small details that explain why something works. But there is also a danger. When you notice everything, you can start analyzing everything. A short reply becomes a mystery. A facial expression becomes a warning. Someone being tired becomes something personal, so observation needs one companion: verification. Notice the detail, but don't immediately create a story around it. Instead of thinking, she's ignoring me, ask, is everything okay? Instead of assuming, my boss is unhappy with me, look for actual evidence. Your ability to notice what others miss becomes valuable when you combine observation with patience. You don't have to react to every detail you notice. Sometimes, the smartest thing you can do is simply notice, pause, and understand before deciding what it means. 2. You need silence to think clearly. Some people become uncomfortable when there is silence. They immediately turn on music, check their phone, open social media, or start another conversation. But perhaps you're different. Maybe after a busy day, you don't want more noise. You want a few quiet minutes. You want to sit somewhere peacefully, make a cup of tea, walk alone, or simply stare out of the window while your thoughts settle. That doesn't necessarily mean you dislike people. It may simply mean your brain needs space to process information. Think about how many things your mind receives in one ordinary day: conversations, messages, decisions, responsibilities, opinions, advertisements, news, and dozens of tiny social interactions. If you never give your mind a quiet moment, everything stays mixed together. Silence creates room to separate those thoughts. For example, perhaps someone says something that upsets you. Your first reaction might be anger. But instead of immediately replying, you take a walk. 20 minutes later you realize, actually, I wasn't angry about what they said. I was already stressed about something else. That small pause can prevent a completely unnecessary argument. You can make this practical. Before making an important decision, give yourself 10 quiet minutes. No phone, no messages, no opinions from other people. Ask yourself, what do I actually think? What am I feeling? What am I afraid of? What do I really want to do? You may be surprised by what comes up. And silence can also improve creativity. When your mind isn't constantly reacting to outside information, it has a chance to connect ideas, remember experiences, and form new possibilities. But don't turn silence into isolation. There's a difference between taking time alone and completely withdrawing from people. You still need conversations, relationships, laughter, and different perspectives. The goal isn't to escape the world. It's to create enough quiet that you can return to the world with a clearer mind. Sometimes, you don't need another piece of advice. You simply need a few quiet minutes to hear your own thoughts. 3. You question the normal. Have you ever heard someone say, "That's just how things are"? And your immediate thought was, "But why?" That simple question can reveal a lot about how your mind works. Many people follow familiar patterns because they are familiar. They wake up, work, communicate, spend money, make decisions, and organize their lives according to what they have seen other people doing. There's nothing automatically wrong with that. But a questioning mind doesn't accept something simply because it has always been done that way. It asks for a reason. For example, imagine a workplace where everyone attends a meeting every Monday for 2 hours. Nobody questions it because it has always happened. You might ask, could this be reduced to 30 minutes? Suddenly, you're not being difficult. You're examining the system. This kind of thinking can be extremely useful in everyday life. Instead of asking, what should I do because everyone else is doing it? Ask, does this actually work for me? Instead of automatically buying something because it is popular, ask whether you genuinely need it. Instead of accepting someone's opinion as fact, ask what evidence supports it. Instead of following an old habit, ask whether it still serves your current life. But there's an important warning here. Questioning everything does not automatically make someone intelligent. Sometimes, people become so determined to be different that they reject good ideas simply because they are common. That's another trap. The goal isn't to disagree with everyone. The goal is to think for yourself. If something makes sense, accept it. If something doesn't make sense, investigate it. And if you discover that your original opinion was wrong, be willing to change it. That is real intellectual flexibility. Your mind doesn't have to prove that everyone else is wrong. It simply needs the freedom to ask, is there a better way to look at this? That question can completely change how you make decisions. 4. You connect unrelated ideas. One of the most interesting signs of a different thinking style is the ability to connect things that seem completely unrelated. You might watch a movie and suddenly think about human behavior. You might be cooking dinner and suddenly get an idea for solving a problem at work. You might hear one sentence in a conversation and remember something you learned years ago. To another person, these connections may seem random. But inside your mind they make sense. Imagine someone trying to improve their YouTube videos. Instead of only watching other YouTubers, they might study storytelling, psychology, photography, teaching, advertising, and even conversations in everyday life. Then they combine those ideas into something new. That's useful thinking. You don't always need completely new information. Sometimes, you need to combine existing information in a new way. You can practice this deliberately. When you learn something new, ask yourself, what does this remind me of? Where else could this idea be useful? Can I combine this with something I already know? For example, if you're learning communication skills, don't study only communication. Watch how good teachers explain difficult ideas. Observe how storytellers create curiosity. Notice how customer service workers calm frustrated people. Study how children ask questions. Suddenly, communication becomes much bigger than a textbook. But there is another side to this type of thinking. Because your brain is constantly making connections, So you may sometimes overcomplicate simple situations. You can connect two events that have nothing to do with each other. So again, balance matters. A creative connection is an idea, not automatically a fact. Test it. Look for evidence. See whether the connection actually works. The strength of your mind may not be that you know more than everyone else. It may be that you can take two ordinary ideas, place them together, and suddenly see a possibility that wasn't obvious before. That is a skill worth developing. 5. You process before you respond. Maybe you're the person who doesn't always have an immediate answer. Someone asks you a difficult question, and while everyone else starts talking, you become quiet. You listen, you think, you consider different possibilities, and sometimes hours later, the perfect answer finally comes to you. If this happens to you, don't automatically assume you are slow. You may simply have a processing first thinking style. Some people think while they speak. Others prefer to think before they speak. Neither is automatically better. But knowing your style can prevent a lot of unnecessary self-doubt. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone suddenly asks, "What do you think about this proposal?" You might say, "I'd like a little time to think about it." That is perfectly reasonable. You don't have to produce an impressive answer in 5 seconds just because someone expects one. In fact, thoughtful responses can sometimes prevent problems that quick reactions create. This is especially useful during emotional conversations. Someone says something hurtful. Your first instinct is to respond immediately, but you pause. You take a breath, you go for a walk. Later, you realize there were several ways you could have responded, and the first one would probably have made things worse. That pause is valuable. You can build it into your daily life. Before sending an emotional message, wait 10 minutes. Before agreeing to an important decision, say, "Let me think about it." Before responding to criticism, ask yourself, "Is there something useful here?" But don't use "I need time to think" as an excuse to avoid difficult conversations forever. Thinking is useful only when it eventually leads to action. Your goal isn't to analyze every decision endlessly. It's to create enough space between stimulus and response that your response actually represents you. Sometimes the most powerful answer isn't the fastest one. Sometimes it's the answer you give after you've had time to understand what you really mean.